This meeting is
Yeah.
being recorded.
What'd you say, Austin? When did I
Oh
get
no, no.
glasses?
Well, that too. But I was like, when did you get an elephant?
An elephant. Oh, the thing in the back. Yeah, I was like, well, depending on where I'm at, like right now I'm in Abby's room, doing this. Whereas if I was at home, I would want something else in the background. So I just threw the profile picture on there, and things like that. So, one thing, not related to anything that I wanted to talk about, but necessarily, but one of the things I just wanted to give you guys an update. So we already have like I think we got like 10 extra subscribers and stuff like that to this to the channel. And I think like we like on certain videos, like we had a ton of views just automatically like kind of being thrown in there. So hopefully the audience is kind of growing, and then I'll kind of let you guys know later today what it was. But yeah, so there's already a few people that are kind of hopping on this.
Hey, there is a point where if we do have people like hopping on, we probably need to like start moving to more like cameras on meetings.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why I've kind of got mine on right now. Just because my Abby also thought, she's like, oh yeah, let people know what your face is and stuff, and so people know you're real. So that's definitely something we can do and we'll do in the future
Yeah,
for sure.
All right.
agree.
If hey, if we go big, I'll send you guys like a microphone and headsets and all that kind of stuff, so you guys can get that top quality shit.
That's what we're talking about. I
So
like
yeah, I got to make you guys like big, got to make you guys famous.
Joe
So
Rogan of football
yeah, I
podcast.
know. Yeah, get a little Joe Rogan podcast going on. So I sent you guys that thing today. So it looks like, who knows, Hezbollah may the terrorists might actually concede or come to heel with
Also,
Israel.
I know I missed the last one. I'm sure y'all covered this, but I just want to go on record and said that I kind of knew what was going to happen with Gates. Didn't get to cut it because I know I guess it was 2 meetings ago when I was on it and we're talking about picks. I did say I
Mhm.
was shaky, and all I'm saying is I called it.
I mean, there's just so much shit about. I think like for him it was definitely optics. Like I think they were like, hey,
It
like we
was,
we
and
can't we can't do this, because I heard somebody talk about the like what actually was kind of happening, and like even the FBI was like, oh, like she's kind of a an iffy source. Like they were kind of like, we're not
yeah.
sure if like it's 100% real, and who knows, but yeah,
Well,
it's
regardless,
definitely
too,
there.
the replacement, like, I don't know if they thought it's better. I mean, she's going to be just as, if not more effective. I mean,
Yeah,
it's going to be the same thing regardless.
yeah, 100%. Um, so I kind of wanted to start. So I wanted to do this video. So have you guys heard of the abundance agenda? Have you heard of that?
I've heard
No.
of it, but I've not looked into it, so I couldn't
Okay.
really.
It's kind of so Marshall Kozlov and Steve Tellis and a few other of these guys. Kind of, I don't know if Marshall is, but essentially kind of the center left, idea, and essentially just trying to throw in kind of like supply side liberalism, and basically just kind of like mixing a bunch of different things together. So I kind of wanted to tie that into a little bit of what I think, kind of like, and essentially the first topic I wanted to kind of throw at you guys is kind of what does like, I don't say progressivism or any of that kind of stuff, but essentially kind of like where I think that's going to be headed. And I think a lot of that is going to be there. So essentially, in my rough interpretation of what the abundance agenda is basically like, hey, we need more schools, we need more energy, we need more housing. And so essentially it's kind of a way, from what I've been thinking about, is it's kind of a way to essentially incorporate kind of democratic spending that they want to do, and just basically focus it more on a lot of the human capital. They were like, education's another one. And so essentially kind of applying it to that so that you can, reduce the cost of things. So, housing's no longer going to be as expensive, and some of these other kind of things that are happening. And it was essentially just kind of a project of like, hey, like we can repurpose a lot of what we want to spend money on and spend it on this and actually make a difference in people's lives and so on and so forth. So that's kind of a broad topic. And I think that kind of where the progressive quote unquote movement is probably going to head to, at least on the left, is going to be something like that. Because I was looking back at kind of what, like Bill Clinton had done, right? So one of the policies that he did, and Austin, you and I talked a lot about this, where there's going to have like a DLC is going to kind of start forming or something like that, where you've got these kind of center left, kind of conservative Democrats that are like, hey, how, you know, this is kind of our where we see the party going, and we're shaping it more into that, and then kind of getting a Bill Clinton figure. And I think yours definitely kind of like definitely think there's like room for that with someone like Andy Bashir or whatever, some of these other conservative moderate Democrats coming out. But essentially, that's kind of what the plan is right? Is we're going to incorporate this abundance agenda and basically invest a lot into social programs, education, and whatnot, and essentially have a big spending bill in that, or not big spending bill, but big programs, and kind of address these kind of more bipartisan issues. Like, for example, I think you guys would probably agree that, hey, we need more schools, we need better teachers, we need, overcrowding in schools is, difficult. So we should build more schools. We should do these kind of things to bring down class sizes, housing. Obviously, that's a huge supply issue right now, as well as the energy. Obviously, we need more energy, and that'll help spur domestic growth and things like that. A few of my critiques that I've kind of been thinking about, and I was planning on messaging them about it, was how are you going to pay for it? Like that. I feel like that's always the big question, especially when you kind of come to these programs. Is okay, so you want to build more housing. So how do you want to do it? Do you want the government to be involved and build more public housing, or incentives, whatever it is? That's going to cost money. So if you're talking about programs such as education in high schools, elementary schools, whatever it is, housing, or education, housing, and some of these other big things that are going to be nationwide, that you may have some bipartisan support, is that you're probably going to lose support on the taxation and how you're going to come up with the funds to do this. But I kind of wanted to throw that out there. Like, what do you guys think, like, is kind of the future that you think maybe the progressive movement's going to kind of take? Because one of the arguments that he was trying to make is that no one's really talking about Medicare for all anymore. No one's talking about universal college education anymore on the liberal side, because they don't think it's going to be something that's feasible and something that's going to happen. What do you guys think? Well, let's start off with you, Josh. What do you think? Where do you think the progressives in the left are going to go?
Like, are you asking like on the side of just in general, or because I'm sorry, I feel like we covered a lot right there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just I guess just in general, like, what do you think? Like, nothing super specific, but just kind of like, do you think that they're going to have some of these, are going to try to repurpose some of these big policy program proposals that they want, or do you think they're going to maybe try to go to something else, or just stick with social issues? What do you think?
I think they're sticking with social issues. I think you'll see a lot more. I think we'll see heavier pushes on more social issues. I mean, we talked about this I think on the first meeting, but like I think in a way we really saw them. They tried so hard to grab onto abortion, and this is where I give a little credit to the Republican side of things. Is Trump talking about giving it back to states and just keeping that narrative. It kind of just abortion was not effective. So
Yep.
I feel like you'll see more social issues become a thing that comes up, but I feel like they're going to stick with social issues. I feel like it's the smarter thing to do. And even if you want to be, a little bit more moderate on that side of it, I think you'll see. I think you'll see a lot more just social issues arising, especially for younger. They'll try to pander to the younger.
What do you think, Austin?
I mean, it's. I feel like. I mean, it's such a broad topic. It is kind of hard to like kind of pin down where, because I mean, there's so many like moving parts to this. Um, as far as like economic issues, I do think that would be a good play to go towards that. Now, whether I mean, I just I agree with him that like social issues, they'll probably double down on that. I really because I think you're already starting to see a lot of pushback on trying to moderate on that because there was I think it was Politico reported the other day that like I think it was Tammy Baldwin maybe in like a Senate meeting was like, yeah, we really need to back away from this, and then it was just like instant like pushback on that, and then I think it was Seth Moulton the other day had like I think he said something about like trans or something like that, and then he was getting like protest outside his office and like his chief of staff I think it was resigned. So I mean like they've really got themselves in a bind because like these social issues are near and dear to their base. So it's like, how can you back off on that? I
Yeah.
mean, it's there is institutional kind of forces at play at this point with it, and
So, oh, go ahead. Continue.
but like I mean, like the post-election like surveys, exit polls and stuff like that show that like that really is off-putting to voters. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is super important to your base, but it's like, normal voters think this stuff is really weird. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just so I mean, they are in a catch 22, and like me and you have talked about it. Like, I think I sent you that article where like I think it was Wall Street Journal was like, yeah, they really need to bring back like a Bill Clinton style,
Yep.
DLC or something. It's like, how do you do that? I mean, really,
Yeah.
and then one thing Josh said was like they're appealing to the young. They're appealing to a very specific segment of the young. Like I can't get over like the fact that like if you look at it, like white 18 to 29-year-olds voted, I think it was 47-49, and then Hispanic 18 to 29-year-olds voted for like by the same margin. I think theirs was like maybe 46-49 or something like that. So it's like basically the same thing. But
Yeah.
so I mean like this is I mean I think the Democrats have gotten so used to like the millennial generation being so liberal that like when Gen Z has come along and it's a lot more conservative than the millennials, it's like I don't know. It really is a catch 22 for him.
So I want to say something about that because I was I wasn't arguing, but I was having a discussion with one of my friends who really good friend, and so we could kind of talk about this. And we talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And he kind of brought up one of the things that I've heard a lot from these kind of very left people, and or not very left, but fairly progressive left people. And I know I'm calling it conservative progressive, but I think just people who are very what you would think a progressive liberal would be. And kind of what they were saying is they're like, yeah, like trans wasn't an issue, trans rights and things like that weren't an issue. And we don't need to abandon that because look at these, this no one talked about it in the 2024 election. And I was sitting here and I was like, well, yeah, I mean that's true. Like, you could find all these clips and they didn't talk about it. And the one that they did get of Kamala was what back in 2019, and they were like, oh, but this was under Trump, blah blah blah. And I was like, so yeah, that's true. But I was like, but I think you're missing a lot of it, and it's almost just kind of like now I'll agree. Hey, I think in certain ways you should be more aggressive on it and saying, hey, like, reframe that argument. But I was like, but I wouldn't say, oh, well, we didn't talk about any of these issues. And I'm like, well, but that's not entirely that's correct in that you didn't say trans or whatever it is. That's fine. But it's like you go back to 2023. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think they had a gay pride day at the White House, and you had trans people there who I think they were uh, men who transitioned into women, and they obviously had gender or not gender reassignment surgery, but they had breast implants, things like that. I think when I looked them up, they had like their trachea kind of like smoothed down so they don't have like an Adam's apple and stuff. And I was sitting here and I was like, but if you go back to that article, like they were I think they were topless at the White House at this event and all this other kind of stuff, and actually got banned from the White House. And I was like, that's in 2023. And so I'm kind of like, to go back to what Austin was saying is where it's like you're trying to walk back these things, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't say anything about that in 2024, but in 2023 and maybe 2020, 2021, and before COVID, you were definitely kind of pushing, not necessarily pushing, but you were definitely aligning yourself in this direction. And now that people they were able to Republicans were able to successfully turn that against the Democrats, it's like yeah, now you're trying to back yourself away from it because you've realized you've kind of gone down this a little bit, almost unconditionally, and you're realizing, hey, this wasn't, maybe we've gone too far, and you're trying to walk that back. And so I'm like, yeah, you can say that it wasn't a 2024 thing, but this was a whole, you know, past 10 years thing. I mean, Joe Rogan even says it too, and that's its own thing, but he even said it back in, 2016, whatever it was. And he's like, yeah, he's talking about trans issues then, and about how liberals were, that's kind of what they were really pushing. And so it's like, when people look at it as like, well, yeah, but who's been kind of pushing this, or who's been kind of aligning themselves with this for the past 10 years? Well, yeah, it's liberals. And then it makes it very easy to say, Republicans are, or makes it very easy for Republicans to be like, yeah, you see those two things? They're connected, right? These are the same things that we've been talking about for 10 years, whatever it is, and that's connected to this other thing. Look at the sports thing, right? It's like, Republicans were kind of against that, and yeah, maybe nobody talked about necessarily women's in sports in 2024, but they were talking about in 2021, 2022, and who was aligned on that one side, right? And so that's one thing that I've kind of been thinking about, is it's like, people want to say, oh, it's not about the transit rights or trans issues or some of these cultural issues. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is. You can't just say, oh, well, Afghanistan was in 2021, 2022, and so that's not in play for the 2024 election. It's like, well, no, but that was tied to Trump maybe is better at foreign policy than Kamala Harris. You know what I'm saying?
Well, like the other thing I'll throw in there, like they may have not actively talked about it this cycle, but like it was literally in the DNC's platform. Like it was
Yep.
literally a plank in their. So, I mean, like you can't deny, like you can't on one breath say we didn't talk about the other thing, put it in your plank. I mean, that's just, and that's another thing that like kind of in of itself that like I think people haven't focused in enough. Like for the last several years, like we heard like, oh, the economy's good, this is good, that's good, and like you were pretty much mocked if you like tried saying like, no, it's not. Like if you look at these measures of like economic well-being, and I think that's like voters don't like getting lectured to. Like they
Yeah.
don't like when they see something with their own two eyes, and you turn around and lie to their face about it. Like that's just that, and that's should be really basic common sense, but I guess that's kind of a rare thing in itself nowadays. But it's like there was this one progressive account I kind of follow because they do kind of do good like research and stuff on like Twitter, and like they brought up like if you looked at like food insecurity and then poverty and stuff, that all went up in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then there was that I think it was Clinton's Treasury Secretary or whatever did that like study like earlier this year that found that like if they use like the original like CPI formats, it would have been inflation last year would have been like 18% instead of like the 3% they claimed.
I think
It
you're right, Austin.
So
could
it's
be.
like I'll find it. I have it saved in my phone somewhere, but it's like you know, it's like so the economic situation was already bad. And they were already getting lied to about it, and then you add the social stuff on top of it, which I think I've sent you guys the exit polls. Like that the social issues was like the third was like the top reason was inflation. Second reason was the border, and the third reason was social issues.
Yeah.
So it's
And
like
to say one more thing about the lecturing part, I was talking to, I forget, it was something with, it was like, don't blame your customer, like don't like, I mean, it's essentially what it is, right? Like, don't blame, the customer is always right, right? Don't blame your customer that, I think we were talking about, oh, I don't even remember, but it was something like that. And it was like, a company wouldn't get mad at their customer, like, oh, our customers are just wrong or whatever it is. It's like, no, your customer is right. And you're not looking at what they're telling you, then, there's only so much you can do. Like, take it out of the political sense and just take it into a business sense. And that's what you're saying. So I
honest.
go ahead.
I,
One last thing, Austin, go ahead.
like it's just like I think it kind of goes back to like the social issues because like this all kind of I think circles the same thing. There was a bubble. There was definitely like a bubble they formed over the last like at least 2 or 3 years, if not the last 4 years. And it's like any criticism was kind of dismissed as this or that, and then it's like it wasn't until like 3 weeks ago they got the kind of reality check like, hey, wait a minute, there is like the issues we're in right now, and like people responded to that just as they did in 2016. I mean,
Yeah,
for lack of a better word, they basically threw up their, the metaphorical middle finger by, casting a vote for Trump again. So, I mean, it's
yeah,
like, they, I, you would think that would kind of spur some reassessments, but like, and I have, and like, we've talked about, like I said earlier, I think Tammy Baldwin's kind of brought that up. I know Seth Moulton's brought it up. But it's like they're still not wanting to like accept that like this is where people are at, and I think
Yeah.
that's a very big structural issue at this point.
So Josh, since you're the one who kind of does a lot of this grassroots door knocking, that kind of stuff. Let's say you were a Democratic. I know you're technically not aligned and all that kind of stuff, but let's say you were doing it for a Democratic group, and given this election and everything that we've seen, how would you tell, or how would you approach voters, the same voters that you just talked to during this election? How would you approach them and say, oh no, like this is how we should actually talk, and this is how we should approach, say, some of these cultural issues, not just the trans ones or anything like that, but just in general.
So you're saying like how would I do it if I was like being pro Democrat, like pro
Yeah.
like okay. So the only way that I could imagine, and this is like what I think they would have had to do this time around, is since they seem to go all in on women's rights, I feel like that's kind of I feel like that would have been like the start of when you're like talking to a voter. If you're in that position of like the Democrat side, I think you're like more like, well, do you have a daughter? Like, or you
Hmm.
really want to vote for her rights to be taken away, or your wife's, or if it's a woman, your rights away. I feel like that would have been the main narrative. If I would have been doing it as a Democrat, I think I would have gone way more into the shoot. I don't know. I mean, you about have to pick a social issue. I mean,
I mean, isn't
I
that
don't.
it? But isn't that what they kind of did though? Like, isn't that what the Democrats did
Yeah,
on the
they
what about your daughter? Well, I saw we have all seen the post, right, where it's like,
right. That
the grandma had Roe v. Wade, and then her daughter, was protected, but now her granddaughter's not protected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it makes total sense that that would be like I said. That's what I assume they did this time. If I'm just saying, like, I was trying to think if like what I would do if I was them, what I would do better.
Hmm. So and to
You
kind
could
of
have
say
gone
like,
up and
go
tried
ahead.
to sell by you couldn't have sold Bidenomics. Like you could not have sold Bidenomics to a regular class like working adult. You couldn't sell that at the door. I
Yeah.
mean, I just promise you, it would not have been a fun conversation. Uh,
So go
yeah.
ahead, keep going.
Like I said, you'd have to go social issue. You'd have to pick abortion. You'd have to pick, um, gosh, man, I don't even know. I don't know what really they did on the door other than a social issue. Because like if you think about it, there's nothing really else they grasped onto.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of weird now that I'm putting myself in the mindset because like when we're at the door, it was everything was like just I mean it felt kind of cookie cutter, but it's like low taxes, um, you know pro life kind of things. So like it's different, but it's like there was more than one issue. I just can't. Maybe it's that's not the way my mind works, but I just can't put myself in a mindset where you have more than one social issue that they could have used.
Yeah. So I always have an issue that people could use, but they never would. And it
Which
was
one you got?
the whole gerrymandering thing, right? And I would just talk about how, and I'd essentially try to make it an establishment versus anti-establishment argument, and just try to be like, hey, like, I mean, let's look at it now. I mean, like, Republicans had a red wave, right? Essentially, right? They had a huge surge in winning
Finally,
congressional, Senate, all this
finally,
other kind of stuff, right? And so they had this huge wave coming in, and they're probably going to end up winning what, three, four more seats in Congress and in the House of Representatives. So it's almost, for me, it's like, okay, well, like, so why is that, right? So it's like, yeah, it's an election and all this, and there definitely was a surge and people voted for Republican and anything like that. But it's like, go look out in California. You think everyone in California was super happy with the economy? Go look out New York, right? They still only have five congressional seats for, I think, Republicans is what it was, and then the rest of them, I
yeah,
think, 17, 15, whatever it was for the Democrats. And it's like, well, but you looked at all those maps, right? And it showed
yeah,
that Republicans were winning and stuff like that. And so it's kind of a hard, because it's something you really do after an election. You say, well, hey, look, this is
yeah.
what's kind of happening. But like that's always an argument that I always love, but nobody talks about it. It's like, hey, like, you actually want your voice to be heard, from now till 2028. You gotta get rid of gerrymandering. You gotta get rid of gerrymandering so that you can actually put people in there who will do what you want, and then slowly but surely you can kind of get into a lot
You,
of these other arguments. You look at
you
some of
need
these
to
populists, you look at some of those things where it's like, hey, if you can win a bunch of seats in 2026, back to where they were like, hey, I think it's in the 60s where it's like there were 60-point swings in the House.
Yeah.
and 40-point swings, if anything. It's like if you have something like that, like you could really have political power that you can do to implement some sort of a policy change that you may think is accurate. That's what I
You
would do.
you should definitely bring the get rid of gerrymandering argument to Knoxville in their county elections.
Wow,
I
that's a
mean,
different story.
at large bids, like, oh God.
Well, but you can even say, okay, Oak Ridge is in the same district down there with Chattanooga, and it's like, is that right? Or should Oak Ridge be, because essentially it's in Knox Metro, should Oak Ridge be uh, Knox, basically the Knox County district that ends up going up north
Because
into
they're
other
what is
parts?
Oak Ridge is in Anderson, isn't it?
Yep.
It's split with another county, but it's mainly Anderson.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, I
You
can
can
see
go,
that.
but that's the thing is you can go both ways. And that's why I'm like, I would do an establishment, anti-establishment, being like, you don't like this? Like,
I agree. I
that's what it
agree.
is. Like, you don't like, hey, like, look at Nashville. Nashville was split into two districts. Just so, and now you could say just so the Republicans win control and stuff like that. But you can be like, hey, like, let's say you're a Democrat, being like, hey, you want what fires you up? Vote for someone who wants to get rid of gerrymandering. You don't like what's going on over here in Knoxville. You don't think Oak Ridge should be part of the Chattanooga congressional district. Vote for somebody who's going to get rid of gerrymandering. Now it would never happen, but I would at least use that as a frame as far as like a social kind of issue, societal issue to kind of influence at least getting a few more points with some of those independent voters. Because then you can say, hey, look, maybe you don't like me in 2 years, you can get rid of me, compared to some of these other people where you can't necessarily do that.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. But even then, it's like you throw gerrymandering out there, who even knows what that is? So,
No, I agree. Um, it is a that is a tough. See, it is tough there, but no, I really love the argument though, so I'm with you on that.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, it's like, I mean, that's something where, I mean, Austin, I don't, I mean, you're in Asheville, right? There's not too much going on there, but let's say you had a district that went from, Asheville and parts of Charlotte, or maybe include more parts of App State over in Boone. It's like, well, maybe you're going to start having Democrats run instead of Republicans, and it's like, well, hey, maybe I don't like that, so you can kind of go both ways on it. What do you think, Austin?
Well, see, I'm originally from Virginia, and so
I
like,
know, but you're over
well,
you're over in North
yeah,
Carolina
yeah.
now.
Well, no, well, the point I was going to make with that was like, it. I feel like even that issue's kind of become more politically toxic because like Virginia did go with like a ostensibly nonpartisan like commission to draw up like I think it was our state delegates and our state senate. For some reason, I don't think they did it for Congress, which is kind of interesting in of itself. But
Hmm.
anyways, so they had like this independent commission, quote unquote, and like I think the way like Trump won, for the example that I've seen people upset about this year from back home is like, okay, Trump won like the same amount of like districts as like I think it was like as he did in like 2016 or 2012. I can't remember what it was. But like the way it worked out is like even though he won the same amount of districts, the way they had set up the commission, like it just didn't translate into like state delegate seats.
Hmm.
And so now the thing is like, okay, I guess this wasn't the big talking point now is like I really don't think that was a nonpartisan commission. So it's like I don't know. I mean, like I feel like that's something that like just me and you've talked about this before. Like the general point, like America is just so polarized now that it's
Yeah.
like it's hard to find any sort of issue that can kind of resonate with both sides. If and like so, if I was on your side of it, like trying to figure out like where do we go from here, honestly,
Well,
feel
hold on,
like
hold on, hold on. My side. Let's slow down on that. I'm
oh
an
okay,
independent.
oh independent.
I'm an independent, and what's it? What did those independents say?
Nonpartisan.
I caucus.
Nonpartisan.
Well, no, no, no. I caucus with the Democrats. But I'm an independent. That kind
Wow.
of
Okay,
stuff.
all right, Bernie Sanders.
I'm more of an Angus King kind of guy, not a Bernie Sanders.
Jesus.
That is such a like an esoteric
Whoa.
reference.
Go ahead. Keep saying what
I
you're
feel like
saying.
the Shane Gillis meme, but oh.
But like, honestly, I think the economics thing, like, I feel like there is. I mean, like, okay, like I think me and you talked about this election odd. Like, Missouri was like what 57% for Trump, but it voted for like that minimum wage law, but
Yeah,
like what, like 60 some percent?
yeah. It did the minimum wage, and then I think it did the abortion one, didn't it?
Yeah, it was very close on that though. I think it
Yeah.
was like 51-48. But like
But
the
even then,
minimum
I mean,
wage,
51% in Missouri for a progressive issue. I mean, that's not bad. I'd take
well,
that.
you take that, but segue into that real fast. Post election analysis showed that Trump was winning, voters that voted for that about as much as he was regular voters. So even a lot of abortion rights voters were still voting for him. So and like that was especially in like Arizona. I think they found that like I think it was like a third of people that voted yes on that still voted for Trump. So I mean, like there was a lot of crossover on that too. But as far as like explicitly like like I said, like for the minimum wage law, that is. I mean, like economic issues, I think is somewhere where you can get a lot of crossover appeal. But I think a lot of the problem with like progressives is they try to like segue it into like really random stuff. Like they always try to link it to social issues or something like that, and that's really off-putting to a lot of people. If you just straight up like, hey, I think we need to have this minimum wage law, we can do this and that with it. That can pass. Missouri was the main one this cycle, but I think it was like recent cycles. There's been some other red states that have done that, like voted for like minimum wage increases. So it's like I think if you just did straight bread and butter like economic populism, that would work. But it's like I said, like they try to link it to so many other things, and you put it. There was I don't know if it was you or somebody else I was talking to. I think it was somebody else was like I kept trying to make the point to him. It's like if we just need to focus on economic stuff, we don't need to be bringing all this other stuff at least now, or linking it because it kind of makes the whole thing toxic. And there was just a refusal to like do that. And like I do know on like like the Democrats have been having like big discussions about what they call the groups, which are like advocacy groups or NGOs, that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. And that's kind of a big issue on that side of the aisle right now. And so like they're trying to figure out like, okay, like we can't really. I think the example somebody cited was like this cycle they were trying to do stuff to outreach to Hispanic voters, and like the stuff they were doing, like they knew from like the data and stuff they were getting was like actively harmful, but they still did it anyway just because like their groups like refused to do it any other way.
Yeah.
It's like if you just did like e- politics is on we make it so complicated, but it's honestly really simple in the sense that like if you deliver, people vote for that.
Hmm.
And like I feel like it's when you that kind of part of the equation's been forgotten. Like that's not necessarily just on that side, but also just like you just got to deliver for people. I mean, it's literally just that simple in a sense.
Yeah. So let me throw one more thing in there because it looks like we've got 6 minutes left in here. So you could argue though, Austin, it's like, well, Democrats did deliver of what they said they were going to do, but then you had the inflation and you had some of these other things kind of go on. So I've heard some Democrats actually say that, be like, well, we delivered. And it's more of just kind of like we had these headwinds kind of happen. But one thing I was thinking about, and I know, Austin, you work from home, so maybe you may kind of be experiencing this as well, is I'm surprised. I think there's a decent amount of appetite for labor and for at least workplace labor rights and those kind of things. I think I saw like Bernie Sanders was trying to get it down to a 36, hour work week. So maybe not 36, but maybe you do 38, whatever it is. And I think there's a little bit of appetite for something like that. Now you could argue whether or not it'd be good, but it kind of goes back to this. Okay, well now we're going against the whole corporate power kind of a thing, and I think there's a little bit more appetite on both sides for that. But it kind of made me think like, okay, like let's say you're someone who's really into labor rights. Well, why don't you push for, and I don't know the whole legality and stuff like that, but why don't you push for something, say, there's this huge moving people who are work from home or working remote back into the office. So I know with my work, COVID happened, we were like fully remote, and then we kind of went to 3 days a week in office, and now they're trying to move it to four, right? So like, what if that keeps going back to working in 5 days a week and kind of going back to normal? I could totally see, someone who could kind of grasp onto that and use that as a tool to kind of say, hey, like, we're pro labor, we're pro workforce, and you're talking about middle America and those kind of things. Maybe not so much working class people, but you could really kind of get those middle class voters. And so that's something I'd kind of been thinking about. I was like, well, what if you kind of put a little bit, I don't know what law you would do, but kind of allow people to work at least one day remote or something like that. Maybe that could be something that could be interesting. And it's an issue that, if you're a progressive person, maybe that's something you want to grab onto.
I mean,
Because that,
so
that that's going to piss a lot of people off. I mean, imagine if you work for the VA. Imagine them like, hey, yeah, I expect you to be in office 5 days a week, or 4 days a week. Next
there
week or whatever.
there is talk of that, like
Yeah, exactly. And how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that, Austin?
I mean, obviously it's nice working from home, and like I don't wouldn't oppose that as a policy in of itself. If like somebody wanted to grab onto that, and like, but like, I mean, just being honest enough with myself, I'm like people that typically can work from home. Typically, it's kind of like they're already. Um, what would be the nicest way to phrase it? Like, I just don't know how much juice you could get out of that stone in a sense because like like the federal employees, there is a union, it's the
Hmm.
AFGE, and it already was like as much as they can within the confines of like the fact we're federal employees, we're pretty much already like vividly endorsing Harris. Like I was getting emails left and right about that.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I do think like, I mean, yeah, this would like for me, I would definitely love to vote for something like that. But like, I'm also cognizant of like it doesn't play well with blue collar workers. Like from my
Right.
experience, people you tell people like, "Hey, I work from home," they kind of look at you a little funny or whatever, and they just I don't know if it's resentment or they just don't think it's real work or I mean like. So I don't know because I mean it's like if you've already got those people were already like I said the AFGE was already like hardcore like on that side,
Yeah.
but it's like I don't know like I really don't know if that would it's something you could run like attack ads on or like like hey I'll fight for this or whatever and it's like but you may turn off just as many as you kind of attract so I mean I don't know I honestly just in my personal experience I think if like I really do think economic issues would be the key because I mean within my lifetime like I think I'm the oldest out of all three of us like I still remember like old timers back in like the early 2000s be like yeah I vote Democrat because they're the working man's party it was like those
Yeah.
old people that like remembered like how it used to be. So I mean, and nowadays it's just when people think Democrat, they just think like okay, they think you know go back to what we started with tonight, like it's social issues and stuff. So I do think that's I th- I th- I think it really just has to be bread and butter like economic issues and like just do the issues, don't complicate it.
All right, Josh, you got 1 more minute, and before I say one more thing, Austin, before I give it to Josh to end this in the last minute, Abby already gives me shit for working at home and doesn't think I do anything, and I say that because she just got home from work. So, Josh, go ahead and end this for us in the last minute. Give us your quick take.
Um, how would you like me to close it out?
Just
Like,
be what final thoughts on what you think is the direction
um, for the direction, man.
for
I
the
don't know.
progressives and stuff.
So, is you talking about our side, right?
For the Democrat side.
Oh, Democrat side. Okay. So, I think, I think really, and I mean this in honesty, I think with Trump going in, and you all probably will agree. At least I hope you agree. I feel like we're going to see a lot of, like he's going to expose a lot of things. I think it's going to put in a mindset. And personally, I think Kamala, in a way, was just in my opinion, and this could be just some random theory, but I do think Kamala was as kind of just a sacrificial lamb that was ran out after Biden to kind of forfeit to it, and I think they're going to try to figure out what their next issue is going to be because I think they learned their lesson on sticking to just abortion and just women's rights kind of thing. I mean, you'll still see a little bit of it in their platform things, but I think we're going to see a just a massive um, push on different social issues. We'll probably see a little bit more on that side, and I think we're going to find out who the moderate liberals are and who the socialist liberals are even more so over
All
the
right.
course of the next 3 to 4 years.
All right, let's end it there.